Tommy. And someone who will be returning in season 3, and someone who I do expect to be heavily involved, is Blanca Rodriguez. So maybe she could be one character who could be returning in the final episode. Now the storyline with Mecha, Zeke and Monet seems like that could be coming to some sort of explosive end as well, because what is left for Zeke? But some storylines will probably rumble on into season 3, and no doubt leave us on a bit of a cliffhanger with something. And could it be with a returning character? We all know that Courtney Kemp has been teasing returning characters all season long, and one character who we've still not seen return is 2-Bit. So is it finally time for 2-Bit to come back to Power Book 2 Ghost? So in this video, we're going to run through some different perspectives of how and why 2-Bit could come back, but also look at other characters like Cristobal, Roberto, and a few others, and maybe this new eyewitness that Kamal Tate mentioned. But let's start with 2-Bit because we've all been asking the question all season long, where is 2-Bit and why hasn't he returned? And maybe because it's too hot for him to come back, he's probably seen Tariq's face all over the news and he's on trial for this double homicide, including killing a cop. So maybe it isn't the best time to roll up Stansfield with a piece in his pocket to collect his cash. And on top of this, let's not forget, he did commit a murder at Stansfield himself when he killed Bars in episode 8 in the first season, and I'm going to come to this in just a moment and how Brayden can tie into all of this. But if Tariq's case does finish, could we see 2-Bit coming back to collect? Now let's not forget, Tariq is the St. Patrick, and even if Tariq doesn't go looking for trouble, trouble will always find him. And his and 2-Bit storyline is definitely unfinished from season 1 after he texted him in episode 8 to tell him that he's out of cash and he'll be back to collect soon. So will it be time for him to return and maybe even set up 2-Bit to be more of a regular for season 3? Or is 2-Bit actually going to cross over and appear in Power Book 4 Force? Or maybe both? Because we can't rule out crossovers, because this is now the Power universe, where I'm sure they'll connect some dots and have some crossovers to Chicago. For example, why in the next episode are we going to see Kevin Whitman looking at the Serbian network, where we can also see Jason Michic's name? We all know the Serbs, they're from Chicago, so is this one way they tie in Power Book 4 Force to Power Book 2 Ghost? Let's wait and see on Sunday. Now another perspective which can't be ruled out is, could Brayden mention 2-Bit while he's on the stand? It goes back to how I mentioned him killing Bars, so let's just rewind it back to episode 6 just to give us some more background and context. Now Brayden and Tariq, they were having a huge argument because of Brayden not being honest about going behind Tariq's back with Kane, and because of this, Kane put Ramirez's badge in Tariq's drawer and he was arrested for Jabari and Ramirez's murder, but they patched things up thanks to Effie, where they both admitted what they did wrong. But in this scene, Tariq told him about 2-Bit and how he used to roll with his uncle and how he came to Stansfield to extort him, but most importantly, he told him that he was the one who killed that GTG kid in the Stansfield pool in season 1. So coming back to Brayden being on the stand, we all know he's going to go up on the stand to 1. Protect Trace, because he's someone who won't be able to keep his mouth shut about Kane and Ramirez and what happened the night they were taken to sell on the corner of Queens. But we're all wondering, what is he going to say to protect Tariq, Kane and himself? Because there is no way he's snitching on Kane and Tariq, because he knows what happens if he does. And he also knows he really is in the game now, there is no going back. Just like Effie said, the game didn't find him, he found the game. So could he drop 2-Bit's name on the stand? This is another potential way 2-Bit could be name dropped or possibly even return. But the last one on 2-Bit before we move on to the eyewitness. Now if they do bring 2-Bit back, then I really do hope we see him getting on the same page with Tariq, because they really could use one another. 2-Bit has always been more of a street soldier than a leader and a decision maker, and he's a very good soldier to have by your side, because he's loyal to the game and the streets, and he's no snitch. We've seen Tariq building a very strong team around him.
Should Americans with no degree be allowed to get $38,070 from this government education?
When it comes to his life outside the game, with Davis McLean, Rashad Tate, and Cooper Sachs. But in the game, he has Brayden, Effie, and he was also someone who even had Monet taking orders from him when he laid out the plan to rob Mecca. And we all know he can't trust Kane, even though they are working together for the greater good. But 2-Bit, he could prove more useful because he could mentor Tariq in the side of the game, which he lacks. For example, his fighting. We all know that Tariq, he needs to learn how to fight still. So I'd like to see 2-Bit being another mentor to Tariq, because he really would be a good asset that he can use. And bringing some old characters back does make sense as we move into season 3, because as I said, there's going to be some old chapters closing with Tariq's storyline, but with new ones opening. So who knows, maybe 2-Bit could be one storyline that could be explored in a bit more detail. Now there's also Cristobal and Roberto, who everybody keeps mentioning because they're both characters who were arrested. But since their arrest, we've seen nothing from them or heard anything about them on the show. But Courtney Kemp did confirm in one of her previous Q&As a few weeks back that Cristobal was in jail, So again, just like the 2-Bit storyline, could they be reintroduced at some point in the final episode of Season 2 just to spice things up in the lead up to Season 3? But other than these three, there's Blanca Rodriguez, who's been confirmed already, and so many other characters that are still alive in the Power universe that could return at any point. There's Ramona, Destiny, and Tasha, who I do think Tariq will speak to when he gets his phone call, but some of these characters can serve the storyline more than others, and at this moment, 2-Bit is definitely one of them, as well as Blanca Rodriguez. But as the topic of today's video is returning characters, let's come back to Tariq's case and talk about this drunk lady eyewitness, and could this also be someone we know? Now, Kamal Tate's phone was blowing up with an eyewitness who kept calling him, but whoever this was, she kept changing her story about what she saw. First she saw one person, and then she saw two, and Rashad Tate used this information to blow up the case. And with Jenny Sullivan wanting to keep this case alive and wanting to take down Tariq St. Patrick, she needs to start establishing some solid facts and evidence against Tariq, and she really hasn't had much since the beginning. So could we see them using this eyewitness? But who is this eyewitness? That's the question. And have we seen them before? For example, could this drunk lady eyewitness be Grandma Estelle? Because she was someone who was also out and about the night Jabari was killed, because she was caught on camera buying some drinks, and she's someone who they've turned into a drunk in Season 2. And let's not get it twisted, she may be a drunk, but she had her senses when she told Tariq he was responsible for their family's demise, which was all facts. But with Tariq beating his grandma in court for custody for Yaz, only to go and get himself arrested,